Public Works Committee meeting, Councilor Wilkerson.
Here.
Councilor Gear.
Here.
Councilor Sims.
Here.
Councilor Nelms.
Here.
Councilor Harden.
Here.
President, you got a quorum.
All right. Can I have a motion to dispense the reading and approval of the minutes from September 19th?
So moved.
Second. All right. Motion by Councilor Nelms, second by Councilor Harden. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Passes 5-0. 1506. 22, request for permission to work within the right-of-way on Reese Street, 16th Street, and alleys surrounding 1707 Reese Street. Mr. Smith?
Yeah, I'll just turn it over to you guys.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I've got the site plan. I'd love to email you. It's a new one.
Do you mind asking to sign in? Sign in sheet.
Yeah.
Oh, for whoever?
Well, whoever's going to
Yeah.
address the committees.
Sure.
We actually, Kyle had to watch on his phone because we were at Birmingham Center watching Hardy play soccer at exactly the same time. Yeah, no, we did. I was actually, because we didn't, like, Kyle was literally watching it on his phone while we were watching Hardy play soccer at Birmingham Center. And so we actually missed the whole thing. We missed the whole thing. We watched the whole thing. Oh, yeah.
Good evening. I'm Lynn Shannon Woolcheck. I'll sign in.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, I took you down there with him. I missed you.
This is our 5th meeting here, and this is going to be a new 4th site plan. And I say that not to complain, but to say that we've earnestly been trying to get a development that we think the city can sign off of. We started this process. Mark Gonzalez loves this project. We started in 2018, got sidetracked with COVID a little bit, and so now we're back. And so we took some of your comments before and have developed a new site plan. And really, to give it context of Homewood, this site's a little over 1.5 acres. And so by contrast, this is about the size of the Valley Hotel. It is twice the size of Little Donkey and Rodney Scott. And so our development, I think the new square footage, we've whittled it down all the way to 14,000 square feet, which might be the least dense development Homewood has seen in the last few years. So let's pull that up.
Maybe try texting.
He's still waiting.
Have you gotten
Can we
it
take a screenshot?
Sometimes the service is
Let's see. Now, what is your telephone number? 205?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll be good. Oh, here we go. I think most of y'all have seen this. Who had the pointer last time? I'd love to have the pointer. Oh, good.
Quiet.
Better check me at the door. So, you know, we've talked a lot about the development side, the envelope. We're not at the permitting stage. We plan to meet all the codes, landscaping, storm drainage. What we're here today is to be able to activate this alley that's been dedicated for a while, to be able to have access. And to access this, I think it's a 60-foot right of way, is that right? It's been shown as a street probably longer than I've been on Earth. I think probably whenever Homewood was platted, this has been shown as a public street. So we hope to activate that into a public right of way into the site, and also to create spaces that will be public parking spaces. We do not intend to reserve those or anything else. We've listened to Dr. Maniscalco. I know we're not supposed to compare these two, but what we've done is we've recreated the building footprints so that we do not count 8 spaces here that he currently uses, even though you can only fit 4 to code. He's sort of pushing 8 in there, so we've said there's 18 spaces. We would like to go to BZA and say, all right, of the 18, we'd like to have 10 count toward our GLA here, but that's not required. But that's our intent. I feel like I need to be transparent, and so we've created on 1.5 acres, 14,000 square feet. We reduced, if you remember, it had a little drive aisle here. We've reduced this size of the building. We've created more parking here. We got rid of that little the outdoor patio and created more parking there. So we've now come with smaller square footage and more parking. And again, we propose to improve the right-of-way to keep it public, like it's always been shown. I think the city's done these projects similarly. Across the street, Jared Lewis did 12 spaces in front of Brandino Brass that was in the right-of-way that's now still public. And so we think it's a good plan. I think it's worked for the city. Y'all tell me, but I think it's been good to let developers improve the right-of-way for parking for public use. This district has a shortage of parking. Primarily, if you look at why it has a shortage, this little group up here, I calculated they've got about 27,000 square feet of building and 70 parking spaces. So the parking problem is right here. I think everybody else probably is adequately parked or can make do. This has been the source of the problem right here, between the grocery and Little Donkey and all the other uses there. So this district has a shortage of parking. Our plan creates the most spaces and perhaps the safest scenario, because we've created the one-way. We're not dumping traffic back onto Reed Street. And this is vital to our development. Since we one-wayed Reed Street, it is vital to get this access, this secondary access. So I'm here again tonight for y'all's consideration questions.
Absolutely.
Oh, sorry. I was not Andy. I meant Andrew. I was just looking at the wrong person. So what you're saying is, of the 18 spaces that are in that, what is now a non-accessible space, 18 of those spaces will be created, and you're only going to take account for 10 of those.
We would
with
like
the
to ask BZA to give us credit for 10.
Yes. Sorry, go ahead.
The answer is that the BZA has a right to reduce his required parking on his property.
Right.
Right.
BZA can't, should not, in my opinion,
Count public.
dedicate public spaces to anything other than public use.
Okay.
It's not that the spaces would become that development.
Right. No. Yeah. Right.
They're public parking places.
They're going to ask for that to be counted in their spaces, so that
If
they
the answer is no, then we'll adapt and.
What they're saying is they're going to reduce the requirements on their property.
And the reason for reducing them is the adjacent public parking.
Right.
What they're actually doing is reducing the number
Yeah,
required.
BZA can only grant variances to their property,
Yeah. Gotcha.
which would be the same effect.
Another question along those lines. I understood you to say that you would be meeting all the codes, meaning that you wouldn't need a variance for parking.
In other words, we're not saying this is.
All construction.
We would,
Well, I'm
we're
asking-
going to ask for a parking variance and maybe some, I don't know what other, we haven't gotten to that permit side, but we don't intend to violate any rule. We intend to, whatever we develop, y'all are going to sign off on it.
Well, I know that
Obviously.
part, but I was just, you said you plan to meet all the codes, but you do anticipate having to ask for
We
variances.
would like to ask for that to be able to get more square footage, yes.
And possibly landscape and tree variances as well, you're
I don't know
thinking?
that we're going to ask for a landscape variance. I think
You'll be cutting down a lot of trees, but I don't really know what, do you know
it's
yet?
heavily wooded, so
what
yeah,
the-
if you left the trees, it would, so we might be asking for permission to cut some of the trees down.
Okay.
But we haven't gotten to that side of the permit, that detail yet, because we don't know what we can build yet. So this is the first domino to fall. Hey, can we use the public right of way? And if we can design it around those constraints.
But the current building space, square footage, you're not gonna have enough parking within your rectangular diameter without going to BZA asking for a variance, correct?
That's what I've been told. If we don't do any restaurants, we'll have it. We would like to do one restaurant there. I think Andy's split. I didn't realize it's 20 spaces per 1,000 square feet. So if you take like Little Donkey and Rodney Scott, they should have had, 240 spaces. They have 80. So we did not realize. I just didn't know it was 20 per 1,000. So if we can't do the restaurant, then this will park without having a restaurant in there. we just do plain retail. So there's 81 spaces for 14,000 square feet. So that's 6, am I good at math? Close to 6 per thousand. But we think that restaurants are good. But if we can't do a restaurant, we won't do a restaurant.
A couple quick questions. I don't know directionally in this diagram, we'll call it south of Building A retail, where those 8 spaces are added. Were those in addition to, I know we discussed something along those lines last time you were here.
In between Building A and
In between
B.
Building A and Building B, on the south end, touching Building A, basically,
I think-
right there.
Yeah, I think these
So
are
are
added.
all those brand new? Those 8
These are
spaces?
added. We got rid of some back here.
Okay, so we made the building a little wider, but
Yeah, and we created a little bit more here because if you remember before, this was gonna be an outdoor
yeah,
patio.
I guess I was just curious what the net change was from the last rendition that we had.
I think, I don't know this parking, but I think we had 16,000 square feet, went down to 14. So 2 per, I might be with math, probably 12% reduction in the size of the building.
And then, just a clarifying question, President Wyatt, the alleyway on the far right here, is that wide enough to be 2-way? Is that going to be 1-way? I'm not totally clear from the.
Yeah.
There would also be 1-way.
I would assume it'd be 1-way, but
Yes.
that'd be a better
1-way.
question for them.
So we'd have 2 1-ways off of Reese going.
Well, this is 2 ways off Reese here. That's 1 way coming in, 1 way coming
Okay.
out. It's just it's slanted to get more parking.
You can come down and out that way.
So the only way out of the center would be to exit off here, this alley, and then exit off here of Reese.
The far right is 1-way coming
Yeah.
down.
This is coming in.
But this up here is 2.
Related to 16th Street near Central Avenue, so that's basically going, even though you're considering it in this development plan together, it would be a standalone public parking lot. So my question for city staff is, would we be required then to include handicap parking spaces within that lot? Number one, what are the requirements? And number two, I would see an advantage to making those within proximity to the door to Central Avenue Dentistry and making sure that there's a connection there. So I guess the first question is anything required?
The question being,
Is there-
are there wheelchair spaces required on the public parking?
Yes.
Or on the, yes, well, there would be, I haven't seen any engineering on it yet, so I don't know what would be required and where. I would think in that area, a maximum of 1
Okay.
would be sufficient.
Because I will say, they're shown on the development plan on the new site, but in the public parking lot, there's not any shown. But I think we would need to, we would need to include those there as well. Like you said, either 1 or 2. Does that make sense, Mr.?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's gonna have to do what we.
Yeah, I mean, y'all can tell me once we get this, tell me the constraints.
He has to comply with all building and parking and zoning requirements unless he gets a variance from the BZA.
Okay. I just want to clarify too that those would be essentially 2 different lots and not like 1 parking space on the other development wouldn't be, okay. It's included in the public lot.
We all shop at places here, and if you're like me, if I'm going to, I'm gonna try to inch out and get a little bit closer to the front door before I can see it in the back. So as traffic comes in this way, I don't anticipate a lot of our patrons to take these spaces. They're gonna try to, there's a lot of parking here, they're gonna try to find one here, and if they don't find one here, then they gotta exit here, they can't come back out, so. I think those spaces will be rarely used, but who knows?
Whenever I'm happy to.
If you wanted to just kind of clarify.
Yeah, so, just a couple of things, because I know we've talked about this a number of times. We've talked about the other item a number of times. And there seems to be at least some misunderstanding going around about a couple of things. So everyone may understand this, but I just want to make sure we all understand it. There are 2 items that we're dealing with that have to be dealt with separately. From a legal standpoint, they have to be dealt with separately. This is not a choice between one or the other. They do involve at least a portion of this land. The only thing that's before us on this item is whether to improve that right of way. It's not the development, it's not anything else. It's from a legal consideration, what we're considering is whether or not to improve the multiple right of ways, correct. It's not the development itself. The other thing is that this, what is that, 16th court? 26th court? I can't see that.
16, and it says 26.
The 26th court is not simply empty city-owned land. It is an actual roadway. It is on the map and is a dedicated roadway. A dedicated roadway creates certain property rights for adjacent property owners. That's why this is a different consideration from other times where we've considered things about giving up land. This one is an actual roadway. That roadway creates certain property rights for adjacent owners. If the city infringes upon those rights, the city can be liable for taking away those rights or infringing upon them. So that's why this one is a little bit different.
I have a question related to that, if I could. So isn't it a roadway that dead-ended at a creek? I mean, it didn't.
No,
it wasn't a roadway.
The roadway shown going over the creek.
Maybe I haven't looked at a proper map, but okay.
So
how does it? Okay. So are you saying that any property, anything that was drawn on an original map back in 1925, we're bound to it, even though a lot of things have happened since 1925?
If it's a dedicated road that the city accepted, yes, which this one is. So in other words, anyone can go draw something on a map. The point is, if it's sort of the quote-unquote official map, that a roadway's there, then property owners that touch that roadway have certain rights.
Okay,
It's
but there was never a road built.
Correct, but there was a road put on the map, just like there were roads all over the map before stuff was built around them. Those roads exist on a map, and that invests certain property rights in the owners adjacent to it.
I would like to see the original map. I think that would be good.
I don't know if we got the original map, but we've got
the one that we're saying shows a
Sure.
roadway all the way through.
Sure. Yeah, Chris.
Is there any place in Homewood where a one-way city street goes into a private parking spot? And once that goes into that private parking spot, who regulates speed limit and everything? Because it's a one-way street. There's no out. You're going into a park. I mean, I just want to know anywhere in Homewood where there is a one-way street into a private parking lot ends.
I don't know the answer to that question.
So where's the jurisdiction once it goes into that
I
private
can answer
parking?
that question. I'll
Okay.
go back to, the city regulates the public right of way, the private property is regulated by the owner of the private property. What they have proffered is that they will give a right of way easement to the general public going in and out of their property based on this traffic plan.
I mean, is that?
We could have a two-way street right there, but no parking. The city makes that call.
We wanted a two-way street, but I think y'all were saying this.
I understand, but what I'm
I'd love to come back to
trying
that.
to answer his question,
Yeah.
the city controls that property and what's used for it. It could be a two-way street.
So you're forcing public parking to go into private parking to get out?
But we also would require that there be a permit, just like we have this parking deck underneath us. It's got private property and public property.
Yeah, but there's two ways out.
Well, this would have two ways out. Go on Reese or go down
South.
the out. It's nothing different than we've done before. We can't make it any different. The city controls public property. Private owner controls private property, but if he's making use of it, we can require him to provide a permanent easement for the public to go for ingress or egress, just like we did with the condominiums downstairs.
Well, and are you trying to say that, are you trying to infer what our decision should be?
No,
about
I'm not.
giving-
I'm not on the committee. Y'all should do whatever you want.
No,
I just want to make
But you
sure.
made a statement about our legality.
Correct. I think it's important that you consider the fact that this is different. this hasn't come up often where it's a dedicated roadway, so I want to make sure, and there have been questions about this, so I want to make sure everyone understands what was before the committee. That's all I'm trying to do.
One other thing. We have hundreds of alleys in Homewood that are not improved.
Right.
But anybody that
But they're on a
touches
map.
those alleys,
Has
right,
one.
anybody that touches those alleys has an interest. Every time we vacated, we required all the owners of the property
Be noticed.
to essentially join in a petition to be vacated. We wouldn't landlock anybody, but we can require certain provisions of this development. As part of the development, they provide ingress, egress easements for the use of the general public based on the schematic that they're presented.
And I will say, Melanie, a similar situation is the alley, that Valley Alley, where we had the guy renovating the house on Roseland, and he wanted access to the alley. He was the only homeowner that was adjacent to that alley who did not have access to it. So we ended up having to, I mean, we had to give him access. I mean, he had legal right as a property owner
To get
to abut that alley. He had the right to have access to that alley. So we had to, that's when we had to make, you know, the homeowners that had closed off the street and built a driveway and all that, they had to adjust their fence in their backyard to allow that property owner to have access to the alley, because as a homeowner adjacent to that alley and it's a public right-of-way, he had the rights of a property owner to do that, which is what that whole situation was about. Which was, you know, very upsetting to the people who had to change their backyard and their fence line and their driveway, but it was because he did have access. He did have a right to have access to that alley because his property abutted it, and he was the only one who did.
Chris.
Yeah. Other question is, we're trying to, what you said before, that it's not this, it might not affect. There's two things going on here.
I said, well, yeah,
Yeah, I know what
what I said was they have to be dealt with independently.
Exactly.
Yes.
Okay. And because of that, we're sitting here as a city making a decision against certain people who bought property on something, he said since 2018, if I'm not mistaken, that's the right year?
No, he said, actually, you mean how long it's been on the map?
No.
No,
How long he's
he
been
said the
looking for
plans
this
have been
project.
in the works for
Sure.
since
Okay.
2018.
It's never been to the planning commission, it's never been presented to any of the city at all until the day this gentleman here stepped in and said something, and just coincidentally, Mr. Hart's boss showed up. I'm just putting that as a
For a
fact.
clarification, in 2000.
What are you, wait. What are you implying with that, Chris?
What I'm implying is, something was on an agenda before, and it got vetoed, or
Excuse me? Be
got
careful what you
set-
say here, Chris.
got set aside to go public when Derek was here. Mr. Walker, remember?
I remember that being on the
He
agenda.
stood
I
up
don't
and
know what you mean by
he-
something being set aside.
Well, the meeting got, I mean, they didn't address this issue anymore. They went public with it, right?
You've lost me. I apologize.
Okay, what I'm saying is, it was on the agenda, he was trying to obtain parts. Am I mistaken?
Hey, I don't know which one you're talking about. I'm sorry.
I'm talking about the gentleman who bought the dentist office.
Okay.
Okay. And so he was here, and he was trying to obtain parking by buying the property. Okay. Then out of the blue, Mr. Walshep said, he came up and said that we object to this due to the fact that we think we got a project coming on. Okay? So, but this project's never been presented. Nothing. So, I mean, are we setting precedents that we can vote on things that hasn't even been presented to stop things?
So here's, again, from a legal standpoint, what we're dealing with. The request to vacate this property then would vacate that public roadway, which gives the adjacent landowners the right to object to it because you are infringing, you could be held to be infringing upon their property rights. So that would be actually the appropriate time to object to it, whether it's this, just like we talked about with the alley over there on the Valley Alley. That's when landowners can object, yes.
Didn't Mr. Harden state?
I don't know why you keep bringing up Mr. Harden. If you want to talk about Shannon Walchek,
No, I'm
then
not.
Chris, let me finish.
I'm talking
If you
about
want to
the
talk
city.
about
I'm talking
Shannon
about-
Walchek, talk about Shannon Walchek.
I'm trying to say John Harden, or Councilman Harden, said in the meeting right here, said, if this project didn't go through, if this didn't go through, our project would be no good. Did he not say that?
I don't know if he said, I don't remember if he said it or not, but it does, again,
But
it doesn't change the fact that they have a legal right to make an objection at that point. I don't know how, I can't change what the law is. They have a legal right to make an objection at that point because that's when their rights, just like if the dentist's office wanted to make an objection.
If you vote this down, is there a problem?
It could be, because you could be infringing upon the rights of the property owner, yes.
So in other words, there will be a lawsuit no matter what happens.
I can't tell you whether there would be a lawsuit or would not. That would be up to whoever wants to file the lawsuit or doesn't.
But you're more or less saying that's what
But
could
you
happen.
could be
That's what could
infringing,
happen.
well, all I can say is you could be infringing upon the property rights by denying it.
Chris, to make you feel better, in 2018, we met with Scott McBrayer in this room. Andy was here, the ward mate who had the bar in Tuscaloosa?
Correct.
Yeah, was here. We talked about it. There was an idea of, hey, can we create maybe a parking deck and make it public parking? So we then went back to Lewis Niquette, we drew a deck, we got Mr. Kendrick, for whatever reason we couldn't, it just wasn't gonna work with public-private partnership there. So we have been working on this project similar to this for a long time, and COVID happened. So this wasn't one of those things, oh my gosh, we heard there's a request, let's hurry up and submit something. This has been, we've been meeting with the city people, and then the new mayor, we waited for him to come in office, and I think he maybe had a parent that died, and we wanted to wait for that. So it's just, it takes time.
Okay.
So I promise you, nothing has happened.
No, I'm good.
Say it again?
A parking deck, what, y'all tried to build a?
Well, we were gonna do a
deck?
park and then lease
That'd have been nice.
part of it
That would
for
have been
public
nice.
use.
Yeah. That's what we need there, parking deck.
from the city.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, we could go.
well,
So
where does $10
I promise
go?
you, we've been working on this, not diligently,
This
for a long
property's owned by
time.
Alabama Power. Just understand that.
Okay.
Yeah, we're in a joint venture
So
partnership with
just,
them.
yeah, does
I was
anybody,
just saying Alabama Power, they hadn't said anything about it, but I got you.
Alabama Power owns
I have a
it.
follow-up question related to the plan.
Counselor Sims?
Thank you. So you referenced that Crescent Central, which is the alley, would be one-way directional, but that would take a city ordinance as well, right?
Sure.
Later. So that's not discussion tonight,
Right,
from that aspect.
tonight is just about improving it.
Okay.
The
Which was
ability
Crescent?
to approve it.
I don't know where Crescent Central is.
I'm sorry, I don't know what it's called either. I was looking at Google Maps. It's the north to south that runs on the east side of the property.
It's right here?
Yes.
Yeah, that alley, yeah.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
part of this item, correct?
Yes, it is.
The improvement of the right of way is part of this item, but yes, in terms of making it one way, we would need to do an ordinance.
Because that was, I hadn't realized that before, and I was just thinking about the business owners adjacent to that. So but the one way is not currently for consideration. As Mr. Shannon referenced, we're looking at the,
Real business owners adjacent to.
their property's back up to it. That's all I meant. I'm sorry. But all we're talking about tonight is really the work in the right of way. And then there's, as the first step.
Here, and exiting here.
Yes.
And that right there.
And so from that standpoint, has there been like a traffic study developed as far as like
Yes.
looking at the capacity of
We
those?
did go with Daryl Skipper when we were
Great.
trying to get this two-way, and Mark Gonzalez has it. It's just the impact of this is very low. I can provide that, get Mark to send it to you. We did a traffic study.
Okay.
So,
Mr. Kendrick?
Can that be provided to council before we
Yeah.
vote on this as well?
Mr. Kendrick, 26 courts there is,
Which one is that?
That's the one
that's,
that's here.
that's,
The road that-
All
that's the
Central.
roadway
That they would
in
improve.
question. Or, right, so I know you brought up the point of paper alleys all over the city. Just to clarify, this one, I understand has been plotted as a roadway. Honestly, I don't know, there's some sort of asphalt, but it's
Yeah,
kind of
it's
broken up,
asphalt.
and so at some point, it was poured, at least to a certain
Yeah, I mean, I
extent.
can't tell you by who or
when
or
when
anything
or anything
else.
like that.
But
So-
it is,
but
it's
there is
asphalt
asphalt
over
there.
Gotcha. So, to President Wyatt's point a second ago, we're talking about vacating it, but then it would take an ordinance to actually one-way it as well, which would be separate from what we're discussing tonight.
Correct, as I understand, that's the proffer that he has made, but it would take a separate ordinance to actually activate the one-way restriction.
So if he were to get some sort of favorable recommendation on 26 Court, would he be able to do it as a two-way without, or would we have, what's the process in terms of what comes first or second?
As I understand it, he has proffered that it will be one way. So if it's not one way, the approval would be conditional upon it being one way.
Okay, I just wanted to know
But we would have
procedurally.
to create an ordinance to do that.
The city would have to dictate that. We control that right away. The fact that it's a 60-foot
He's just
right of way,
improving.
It could be 2 lanes in and out. We want it to be that
Sure.
way. But what I've understood is that we wanted as much public parking permit developed as possible, so that's what they.
That's where we are, okay. All right. Mr. Maniscalco.
If permission is granted to work within the right-of-way, is the developer limited to this exact plan?
Well, so I'm not sure exactly what you mean. I'm sorry.
In the public space.
In the public space,
In terms of the 18 spots.
yeah, he
and
would be
everything
proffering that this would be what it would look like and what would be built.
So they would be unable to do anything other than this?
In
the public
26 Court, yes, in
In
the public
16th Street.
space, that's correct.
Unless y'all make me do something like.
Yeah,
like
unless something
handicap or-
changed, I guess,
Yeah.
but.
So that would require coming before the committee and saying, hey.
Correct.
this is the
What would
situation.
happen is this would be attached to the resolution, and so it would, that would become part of the resolution and be controlling. It would not control the development part because that's not part of this issue. It's shown as being related to it, but the public part would be controlled by this diagram that would be attached.
And those diagrams would be attached to this right-of-way agreement. So like, for example, if we moved it out of committee tonight, it would be the diagrams attached to the agreement that we would be looking at next Monday, correct?
Absolutely, yes.
For just the sections, so
For the public
there is a
section.
right-of-way.
Correct.
And then, go ahead.
There's also new things underground that would be in the public space as well that hasn't been shown. So are you guys also voting on that as well?
So that would be part of the permitting process. The engineers on the 4th floor would make sure that that was meeting all appropriate ordinances and codes, but the roadway would look like this.
Okay, but you wouldn't say, well, you can't run your stormwater that way, or not?
Well, he has to meet all of the ordinances and codes with regard to stormwater, so but the 4th floor would handle that. He would have to do it pursuant to all the codes and ordinances. If he were to do it differently than that, he would have to come back before us for some kind of variance, but I don't anticipate that that would be.
And I just want to say to all the committee members on this, obviously very important for our business, and you know, I've been to these meetings for 4 or 5 months now, and what keeps coming up is the overdevelopment and of Homewood and this traffic parking problem here in this area. So you know, it's my opinion that, and probably anywhere in Homewood, nothing should be approved that adds to that problem. And even with this lower square footage, you're still requiring 10 spots in the public. You know, I think 100% of the spots should be on their own property. And now we're not adding to the problem. At least we're maintaining the same one and maybe adding some more parking spots to help with the problem in public space. But these businesses would not add to the problem, and as it's drawn here, they still add to the problem by putting 10 cars out in the public parking spots.
Well, I think to clarify, it's just,
It's not true.
well, no, we're not approving anything in terms of the development plan. So if he were to move forward with developing the lot, he would still be subject to whatever the BZA says if he's asking for a variance in some way, shape, or form. If he doesn't, he's going to have to scale back the project.
So we should just be like ignoring what's on his property right
No,
now.
what I'm saying is, we are not approving the development. And we don't have any authority to deal with the parking, any parking variance. That does not come to us. We don't have any authority to do it or to tell BZA how to do it. He's got to meet his parking requirements for the development unless BZA tells him he doesn't have to. But that is not, we can't speak to that, and that is not before us. But even if this is approved, the way it currently stands is that he has to meet his parking requirements unless BZA tells him otherwise. We are not providing him any way to get around that because we can't.
And as Mr. Shannon pointed out, if he doesn't get, if he does request a parking variance and it's not granted for some reason, he'd have to scale back or change
Or
change the intended use of the buildings, the development itself. So,
but yes, this doesn't give him any sort of approval to have any less parking spaces than he is otherwise required to have. Nothing about this does that.
Is he still asking to work in the right of way up by Reese Street, or is it just the?
No, I think they cut that
Take
off.
that out.
Yeah, I think
It's
they
just
cut that out.
down there, over here.
Yeah, we had some parking spaces.
Yeah, they took those out.
Vertically.
because of the there was sidewalk,
Yeah, that's
along
what the
through there.
sidewalks
The only, I don't know how you guys feel. I know last time we left off, there was going to be some sort of attempt to discuss amongst property owners that are here. I don't know if that happened in any shape or form, or if that's gone anywhere.
We had a good meeting, and they talked about their willingness to kind of change what things look like, which was good. The problem is we have two conflicting desires, and that we want to make sure that we have parking spots for our business, and they want to maximize their square footage.
Sure.
And that's reasonable for what for being able to make money in a development business, and those two things just are like mutually exclusive.
How many spaces are there current? Not spaces, but how many people? How many vehicles can be in this space
properly,
currently?
there would be 4 spaces.
Yeah.
There
Okay.
are more than 4 people parking there now, but
There's 9.
9. Okay.
Yeah, if
Up to 9.
in Cale's
Right.
drawing that he did, in order to meet our parking ordinance, there would only be allowed to be the 4 spaces that are right up next to the building. And one of those would have to be a handicap space.
Okay.
So it'd really be.
So this doubles what they're able to squeeze in right now without it being striped properly. But it would basically
Correct.
triple it or more.
Correct.
Under.
Because technically, if
The
if
schematic.
the vacation were approved and they were able to do the 4 spaces, it would really only be 3 spaces, because one of them would be a designated handicap space. So that would really be 3 spaces plus a handicap space, an
Yeah.
accessible space.
Depends on how you look at it, but if this were approved, you're going just on that side. I can't read this.
It's 18.
Is 14 and 4? Is
Yes,
that it?
that's
Okay.
correct.
So if you go from what is currently available to park there now, you're going from 9 public spaces to 18 spaces. If you're talking about what could be striped there per the ordinance, you're going from
4.
and there, let's just assume there's like Mr. Sims said that there's a handicap that's required there, so that's a wash. You're going from 4 spaces to 18 spaces in that area, 4 public spaces to 18 public spaces in that area.
And along the parking situation, I mean, I think it is important to realize that, in the middle of the day when that parking lot is generally full with 30 or 40 cars, they'll have to have someplace else to park if the development goes through. And you would imagine some of those would be parking in that new right-of-way, the ones that are currently in the empty lot.
And Councilor Andrews, from that standpoint, I don't know why I'm, I feel like you're familiar with Reese Street, but maybe I should talk to Councilor Walney. But do we know how many striped parking spaces will be along Reese when that project is completed?
Additional spaces?
Yeah.
New spaces.
So that will be
Based on
beneficial.
the city's design.
Right.
And Central, we added all those spots.
You also have
Parking on
12
Central.
spaces here, if here at 12 here, and you got 11 up here.
Well, and to add to that, the northern end of Central, where it starts to curve, those spaces that are in front of the two gyms, those are technically city spots, because of where the right of way sits. As part of the Central Avenue Airport study, it was proposed in the study whether it comes to fruition when we do CDs. Those are proposed to be flipped around to big city parking spots, but it's there. I think there were 8 or 10 there. Something like that. But I'm not sure how that'll pan out because we don't have CDs yet.
Okay. Does anybody have anything else or desire to?
Have you guys looked at the environmental impact for that stream that's there and all the trees?
Again, that would be part of the permitting process, that the engineers would look at it, and they would have to comply with all ordinances, and
I guess that is
Well,
how does the tree ordinance factor into that?
I mean, that is chock full of trees, and it's a great little habitat with a spring-fed stream there. And I've met with a firm about it, and they said this is called an ephemeral stream, which is federally regulated, and this would be considered like wetlands or
They have
something
to
like
meet
that.
all of that requirement.
They would have to meet any requirements that are, that this property creates. They would have to meet them. It doesn't change any of their ability to do that. It's not reducing any requirements on them than exist with that property. The only thing that's before this committee at the current moment is whether or not we allow them permission to go do everything that they need to do in order to make that happen.
Need for their development?
No.
Just for the improvement to the alleyway.
In other words, like we were talking about earlier, that's what the roadway will look like. Whatever's required for them to get to that, they would still have to do. It doesn't reduce any of those requirements. And if that includes federal wetlands things, then that's what it requires. Yeah, whatever it requires, it requires.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right. Councilor Hardin, Sam, Gear.
Yeah, so, go ahead.
Nope.
I was
okay.
just gonna say, I know this has been a lot of back and forth, but I think that, bit by bit, we've gotten to a little bit better place in working with what happens within the right-of-way. There's additional steps in this process that'll need to be boxes checked, but for what we're looking at today, there's been some improvements. So I'd like to make a motion to approve with the proper indemnification agreement, pending the results of the traffic study, and also with the provision of a handicap accessible space in the 16th Street lot.
Second.
You're talking about on 26th Court.
It's
I don't know if
16th.
that's,
So
it's
is it
16th
Norwood?
Street on our item,
Yeah,
so.
I'm with you. I'm not, but you're talking about what
Don't
that
worry.
street
I'm
that
talking
goes
about,
by the dentist's office, right?
Yes, from that standpoint, we realize that, we're trying to work, and that is our public space, and we're trying to work with all surrounding property owners on, an amenable solution, and hopefully, we've arrived there. So that is my motion, yes, that lot.
Can I make one suggestion? Your motion also needs to include that there be property owner would agree to proper, appropriate cross easements for ingress and egress from the property.
Okay. Yes, I amend my motion for appropriate ingress and egress on the property.
When I say for the city of Fleming, ingress and egress.
Yeah, because so in addition to this motion, you're gonna create an agreement. That agreement's gonna include an exhibit, and that exhibit's gonna be reviewed by us in city
That
staff.
exhibit will be that picture you just saw.
Yep.
Second.
What designates the public space, the public property is.
Well, in that picture we just saw minus the one for 16th, we'll need to include the addition of
Can you put it back up?
handicap.
I'm not sure.
I think he's just saying there needs to be a designated
One handicap
handicap
space.
space, yeah.
Right.
With a preference of it being the space closest to Central Avenue would
Yeah.
make this most sense to me. But
Which I think is
possibly
weird.
too, pending what the regulation says.
Well, Watt was gonna tell us about that.
Yes, that's right.
again, the handicap requirements will be met at the time they apply for a permit to construct these improvements.
Okay.
This hypothetically just allows them to then permit a public improvement.
But since it's on our property, I mean, on city-owned property, I just want to go ahead and spell it out. Yeah.
Sure. We can require that first one to be handicapped if you want to make that a part of your.
Because I think that's where the handicap space was gonna go.
If the property were to change hands, that's where it would have to go.
Yeah,
So
that's
if you
where it was
wanna-
gonna, that's where the original.
One handicap space at the first space coming off of Central.
Okay.
With appropriate, again, accessibility ramps.
But all of that
Assuming
is
that's
construction.
okay.
Yes,
with you.
okay.
If you'd
Yeah.
rather us put it somewhere else, it
They're not
doesn't.
building anything tonight.
Okay.
All right, motion by Counselor Sims, second by Counselor Nelms. Let's see, who's doing notes?
I'm me.
Okay.
Okay. Nick
All
made,
right, I was
you
like,
are.
Nick
no
made
Melody,
the
no
motion.
Robert.
Nick made the motion and Miss Nelms seconded.
Yes. All in favor?
I
Abstain.
Okay, so
Okay.
4-0-1, right?
Yes.
On a lighter note,
Yes.
I'll just say that, you know, we dealt with this in Ward 3. Gianmarco, they put in a valet, so maybe you can put in a valet.
Very common for restaurants, but it's not for any other business.
I'm just joking.
All right. 010722, request for permission to work within the right-of-way on 29th Avenue South in front of PNC Bank. Brought to us by Cale Smith. We had this item last time in committee. We were gonna take a quick inventory to see what we had because the current maps or Google images we were looking at didn't have everything currently
Yeah, so.
as they are drawn. So.
William's here from Atlanta. William, right? Yeah. This is the survey. Can you, the existing property, can you go to the next slide, to their design? We did take an inventory of that block, between, 19th and 31, and there are no accessible parking spaces.
And there's not on the road that's in between Real Rosemary and Urban, there's not one there as well?
Right. Yep. There is one. So our ADA transition plan that was created in 2017 or 18 by SANE identified 50 accessible parking spots in the city and determined that only 5 of them actually met ADA accessibility requirements. So there's one of the ones that isn't approved, that doesn't meet ADA accessibility on the southwest side, kind of in front of the old police station. So this would certainly clean that up and help that. And help meet our ADA transition plan. It goes exactly back to what you were just referring to. Whenever the city does work in its right of way, we should consider adding at least one accessible space.
And this is a van accessible space, right?
Mhm.
Which is, we need to, I mean, what is the ratio of including
Yeah,
that
so the
compared to-
first parking space, and you might know more about this than I do, but the first parking space up to like 10 or 20, 25 is supposed to be a van accessible space. And then after that, you get a
second.
After that, up to 49, you got 2 home van accessible.
Right.
3 at 75, 4 at 100, and then it's a percentage going past that.
I don't think I'm gonna remember that, but I think I get it.
One
Your
per
first one is a
25.
van, and
Yeah.
then the next 3 are
Every 25.
Right.
Okay, regular percentage. Okay, thanks.
Do I need to, I'll make a motion to
Oh, yes, Councilor Ball.
I can't really see that well without my glasses today.
Yeah, it's a
So,
little hard.
if you can point out on that map where the existing handicap space is on the property?
On the private
back.
Correct, yeah.
We had a better image of that. That's
Yeah, I just
like
can't see
It's
it
in the
now.
back.
Sure, it's behind the building, but Ryan's gonna pull up a. Perfect.
so it's back past the bank teller. Yeah,
it's
right
right
there.
there.
That's right. Okay, I'm just refreshing my memory. It's been 2 weeks,
Yeah.
so it's a little bit rough. So, what was the hardship that 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 spot's not sufficient?
We're not saying there's a hardship with that spot per se, but if you really wanted to analyze it, so it technically does not connect to the door. The pedestrian using that space would have to enter into a traffic area in order to get to the door. But also, when you're looking at the maneuvering space for that accessible space, it's only accessible through the drive-through there of the bank. And when they were backing up, they would also have to contend with that added traffic coming next to the tellers there.
So all logistical problems on your property that you as a private business owner could solve, right? Just to be clear.
It could be. All I'll say is
That's all I need.
PNC has gone through a large initiative
I just
to
want to make sure I understood this.
accessible spaces at all of their locations. And so this was just identified as a place where it could be improved.
I'm not opposed to the handicap parking. I feel like you're putting a large, with having it on your property as a private business, you could make the changes needed to accommodate your customers instead of coming out to the right of way and impacting the roadway, the entrance and egress to your business, the duration of the construction project. You know, we have existing handicap spots on the street, though they don't meet your corporate policy. I understand that.
But we don't
Well,
have.
we don't. I
They
think
do,
it's what
it's in
Gail
front
said.
of, yeah, they
So
do, it's in
from
front of
my
the police
perspective-
station, there is one in front of the police
GMC
station.
design handicap spaces in this project.
There are none. There are none. I
There's,
drove-
John, there's one in
There
front of the
are
police
some
station.
down the street.
There's
There's
one in front of the police station,
GMC
there's
looked
one in
at
front
the
of.
street.
I mean, there's none on this side.
There are in front, there's one at the end down by the curve, and there's one across the street at the police
It
station.
should not sound in the center of the road. Now,
Neither
if
of
we
those
wanna
are very
go-
accessible.
We need to go, take
Just to make that clear.
I went out there and looked at it. I must have missed it.
They need to give up one of their drives.
I mean, I agree with
There's
Councilor
no need
Watney,
to,
you, this
if that's
is,
the
you
case.
have the property, I mean, that,
I
our
just feel like you're
downtown.
asking
Did
a
we
lot
give
of
up
the
one of
city
what?
and citizens. Give up one of your entrances on the side of your business so that we can make it work. Because you're just asking a lot of a parking restricted city.
Brian, can you go back to the other, yeah, the other
On
image?
your private property, you can make it work. Which is probably better because you know your customers.
Councilor
We're
Waltney,
not trying to give up the space.
which entrance, Councilor Waltney, are you?
I mean, they have.
Yes, there's a parking space in the back dedicated. They just don't want to make the changes.
We already have some too, which is why
Their lanes.
with the GMC.
So that it's safer. They want to just go out into the city's property and make the changes. And like I said, I'm not opposed to the accessibility. It's just, it's like they're transferring that onto the city. Not onto us to pay for it. They'll pay for it because it's a working highway.
So,
We're not trying to move our accessible space.
No, I know you're not.
Okay, just trying to make that clear.
so are you referencing the two ingress points up above, Councilor Waltney?
That's not.
Wait,
No, further up, Brian, further up, Brian.
That's not there.
Further up, Brian.
No.
Right there, where there's two ingress points. I mean, that would essentially. Is that what you're referencing there? No.
No, I'm stating that they can make the changes on their property to accommodate the needs of the request without impacting the city right away. Therefore, this item is not necessary.
I mean, alternatively, I see it as a benefit to the city too, because we need to add accessible spots in our right of way potentially. But I don't know, that's why I also reached out to GMC, because you referenced their plan. So has anyone received any feedback from GMC? And maybe that was mentioned already?
I thought those were accessible ramps that they, but I don't know. I wasn't here when that went down. But it was my understanding when I came in, like Greg Cobb said, that they had designed about 8 or 9 accessible ramps along the sidewalk to allow for safer ADA crossings at some of these. And those never got done. I don't know if parking was included in that or not. I know that we have an ADA transition plan.
Those were part of the whole overall plan, bringing the city into accessibility and making it over a period of time.
Yeah.
There was no set plan in place. Those were identified by GMC as places that we needed to put those as we begin to progress to change and meet the ADA standard.
We're talking about ramps, right, not spaces.
That's
parking
correct.
spaces.
Right. That's correct.
Yeah.
They were
So-
ramps, it was not
Just so we're
spaces.
clear,
That's correct.
and when we put in the, tell me if I'm wrong, when we put in the parking spaces along that street, we certainly looked at what the ADA requirements at that point and met whatever they were, correct?
That's correct.
So it's not that there's an additional ADA space needed from the public standpoint, it's just that they want an additional one, am I right?
I think the ADA transition plan would disagree with that.
Hey, between 31 and 18th Street on 29th Avenue, in the public parking, the only one is the one right at the intersection of 18th and 29th Avenue, right in front of Track Shack, from my observations. Is there another one you're referencing, Caleb?
Yeah, there's
the
one
police station.
right there.
Go down the street.
But that one was identified as non-compliant.
Okay, can we see
You
that
gotta
one?
bring that into compliance and.
I guess maybe the sign was taken down then. since
Right
it wasn't-
there.
Yeah, there it is, right there. So there's no 5-foot striping for someone in a wheelchair.
With a van or,
Yeah.
To get out and access the sidewalk.
What would it take to make that
Safe.
compliant rather than take away one of the spaces for PNC?
Striping, to do that striping, regardless of this request?
Yeah, but I mean, I can't speak to that right now, because there are other areas that were identified as not being compliant. And I don't know what.
I mean, all cities are non-compliant. I mean, again, you're gonna remember,
It's a
when this
moving
thing
target.
came in, it's a target that they're asking cities as they develop or redo to begin to kind of meet. It's a plan that you start, and we've been working on year by year to try to address those deficiencies. So, I mean, that's kind of, you gotta make sure you understand the whole section of this thing is when we done it, is to identify those and then begin to plan to work to meet those. But it was for the ramps themselves was the study that we had them do.
Yeah.
That was part of the requirement that we met with the federal government to do that, was to identify the ramps that could be possible in that area.
I guess this is my issue. If we want to look at this street or any street and figure out where we need more handicap spaces, I'm all for that, let's do that. What I'm not in favor of is a business shows up and says, I want a handicap space for my business, even though I've already got one, and I want you to put it right here. Well, now how do we distinguish between this request and every other business owner's request? That becomes a problem.
It needs to be
In other words,
holistic.
we are not, if we do it because the business owner asks us to put it in that place, as opposed to we as a city have determined that we need to put handicap spots in certain places and determine where those are and put them in, the latter is a legitimate discussion, I think. The former is not, especially where the business owner has an accessible spot on his property. And if he wants to make that, or if it wants to make that work better in some way, he has the property to do that. So that's my issue with it, is simply, like I said, I have no problem with us doing a review and figuring out where should handicap spaces go, and if we want to put them in, put them in. I don't think they should come up as a request from a business owner, because then we get into a situation of how do we tell future ones no and still be handling businesses equitably.
Well, in this case, I mean, it sounds like you're saying, it should all point back to a plan. And so it sounds like there is a plan recently for this thoroughfare, so maybe we can just carry it over and confirm with GMC.
I don't think GMC has anything to do with this. So the GMC designed
Ramps.
locations.
Not
for
parking.
ramps.
Ramps.
Oh, I thought they did the
Pedestrian
striping plan.
No,
I thought that was
there
referenced yesterday.
there was
I mean,
confusion.
last week.
Yeah.
Okay.
They did the ramps. They worked with us to develop a plan for the ramps.
Gotcha.
Right.
The
Okay.
handicap ramps.
So the ADA transition plan identifies 50 existing
Yep.
ADA parking spaces, and identifies 45 of them as being non-compliant, and identifies 5 as being compliant. And then they have diagrams in
a
there
plan to fix them.
that show, but also that show areas where they are needed based on density and
Yeah.
traffic volumes and all that. And this intersection is one of those locations.
you say this intersection?
The intersection of 29th and 19th. Spin around.
And we have one there, and it's just not correct.
That's correct, that's correct.
So we can bring that into compliance and be.
Yeah, I think that needs to be for sure brought into compliance regardless of this item.
Right.
So I want to make sure I understand what you said, because what I thought you said earlier is we are short, we need that, something along there. But that's not what you're really saying. You're saying we're just not in compliance with that one.
Right, there was a space there.
He's saying there's
It's
one
not-
in the vicinity that needs to be addressed.
Right.
At the point in time that one was done, it probably met compliance.
But
But
it
when
does not
ADA
now.
changed
But now
their
it doesn't,
standards,
yeah.
and we started doing the whole redesign of all of them, then that area was marked as it needed to be what we call van accessible.
It was very expensive to do the whole plan.
So, again, you gotta go back, that was done when they redone all of this stuff.
Yep.
Okay.
I don't have anything else.
Will, do you have,
Yeah.
did I leave out anything or miss something?
Yeah, I mean, all I would say, I can tell you, the compliance issues, starting with this space, have to do with that 5-foot striped area and it overlapping the driveway, also with there being no curb ramp there.
So we would probably, if we did this one to meet compliance, we would lose a parking space.
Yes.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Or,
If you were looking at the other one that's in front of Trustmark, I believe you
well,
referenced.
I was gonna say, or could you narrow that driveway, that ingress?
Sure.
That's true.
Yep.
Yes, you definitely did.
And potentially add another space
Or
in
close it
that.
off and add a bunch more spaces.
Yep.
Yeah, well, we are parking in there. I mean, if, you know, we look at what we lose versus what we gain versus closing that off, I mean.
That's right.
Right?
Well, and there's another egress on the side.
Yeah, that's right, that's
Yeah,
right.
except you
You
probably
can
have to
still
go
go in
in
there,
back
you
out.
can close that off.
I don't know.
You could actually go into the parking lot there.
You can still back out that way and go back out.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's 2 ingresses
Okay.
and egresses there.
All right, anybody?
Oh my good God.
Well, and so the other, well, I was gonna say, the other space in front of Trustmark, it has a triangular striped area, which does not meet compliance because it has to be a 5-foot for an ambulatory space along, which it does not meet, or an 8-foot space for a van accessible ADA space. And that's what we are proposing here is a van accessible ADA space, which there are none in this 2-block stretch. Okay?
Well, I'm not on the committee, but I think the obvious answer is close off the egress to that police station, fix that parking space there.
But, I mean, that still doesn't, I mean, they
Can we
still
count
have
that
their
as
own.
adding your spaces and getting our ADA space?
That's, you mean take away the space in front of PNC and
Yeah,
that-
by
yeah.
virtue of this conversation, we
Does
just
that
can't
make
mark it.
does that address your issue if we fix that space right there?
Does that address the issue with compliance?
With your issue, with your request.
Well, because they already
I mean,
have.
you have a space
They have a
on your
space on their
property.
property, and they have room on their space
Well,
if
right,
they want to do
we're
another
trying to
space.
improve it with relation to our main entrance.
Well, I get it.
So, it's still cross,
You know.
I mean, I'm not on the committee,
Okay.
but, yeah.
Anybody have want to move forward
There's no
one way or the other on this?
We just need to do something.
I'm just not seeing.
Counselor Jones?
Yeah, no, we looked at this before, and we don't need to take it piecemeal. We really need to look at the overall, the holistic plan for where they need to go and where they need to be improved. I would not support this plan before us.
I'll make a motion to deny.
No, you can't do that.
You can't do that.
You have to make a motion in the positive.
In the positive, yeah.
I'm sorry. All right. My bad.
We're positive.
We're positive.
You say motion
know
to
better.
approve and then it fails, right?
Yes, that's what you do. You motion
Say
to
motion to
approve, and then
approve.
you vote against it.
Tried
if you don't
earlier,
like it.
make a motion to approve.
Okay,
So is that
motion
a
to
motion?
approve by Counselor Harden,
Second.
second by Counselor Gear. All in favor? All opposed? Aye.
So.
Nay.
Was two
That
people,
was-
everybody
Yeah.
else?
No, nobody.
No, we didn't.
Yeah.
We
Nobody
did a roll
voted.
call vote?
Right. I mean.
Sure,
Seriously,
yes.
shouldn't have
Wait
to.
a second.
It's a freaking committee meeting.
I was just gonna say, I mean, if we develop a plan, that's great, but what if the plan coincides with this? Why should we move it out now? I mean, if the plan ultimately says, yes, we need a space here.
Because that's 2 different things. You're voting to approve their work in the right of way.
Right.
This has nothing to do with our plan or what we might do at a later date. This is, are you approving their ability to work in the right of way and take one of our parking spaces and put a space in it?
Well, it's still our parking space that we're providing accessibility
still be-
to.
But that, the
residents.
issue is not that. The issue is, are you going to allow them to work in the right of way, yes or no? vote the way you want to vote, yes or no. But that's the answer. That's what it is.
All right.
Do we need to do roll call vote, or you don't say all those in favor?
Yes.
I'm in favor, yes.
That's 2.
Okay, hold on. We're gonna start over. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
All right.
So
it's
3
four-
to 2.
Huh?
3 to 2.
He was the nays, that's hard.
2, sorry, 2
Yeah.
to 3, yes. 2 in favor, 3 against.
Yeah.
All right, here were the nays, so I'm confused.
1, 2, 3.
Nels,
Hardin.
Hardin, Wolverton.
Mills, and Wolverton.
Okay.
Put it in your hair. Everybody here, she was at-
New business 1909, 22 request for permission to work in the right of way at 514 Edgeland Place, Twin Construction, Kale Smith. More concrete, straightforward. Mr. Smith?
I mean, nobody should have to sit there and shut up. I mean, it's ridiculous.
All right. Okay, this is 514 Edgeland Place.
This is for Twin Construction, request permission to work in the right of way. Did I send you this, Brian? I sent you a PDF link. I did, but I separated them out. Oh, okay. Yeah. So what they're proposing to do is to go to the other one. I think we're yeah. Removing this existing inlet for their drop, they want to put in their driveway here, and this conflicts with what their proposed driveway location, where their proposed driveway location is, and they want to put in something like this, except they're going to put in 2 of them next to each other.
And not in the same location?
In the same location, but just so they can.
You can
so
drive
imagine
over that?
Yeah, so you can drive over it. Right.
And walk over it, and not have it hit you when it pops up.
But yeah, there's the same.
From a stormwater perspective, the 2 of them work just as well.
And it really looks nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it catches debris before it goes down the drain, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. No guarantees.
Maybe.
Yeah,
That's
better,
right.
for sure better than that one.
All right. It's as simple as that?
That's it. It's as simple as that.
All right. Anybody have any further questions? I think it keeps Pennywise from coming out, so anybody have any vote or motion for this item?
Move to grant permission to work in the right of way, 514 Edgeland Place.
And pending the proper indemnification agreement? All right.
Second.
Motion by Counselor Geer, second by Counselor Nelms. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, 5 to 0. 2009-22 request for permission to work within the right of way at 1541 Wellington View Road. Vicenta Smith and Wyatt Pugh.
Yes. Okay, Ms. Smith is here. This is a double lot. What they've done here is they've begun doing some work on their property. They built a retaining wall and some other work. It's going to require some repair work to be done to the valley gutter. The right-of-way is approximately 13 feet back from the valley gutter.
So they're already in it.
Yeah, so here's the right-of-way. Here's the approximate property line. And so you can see this is the right-of-way. The request is to finish this work, which is begun. And Ms. Smith, you're welcome to chime in as well if you like.
If you can sign in real quick on the sheet right there, that'd be great.
Just your name.
Counselor Andrews, are there any sidewalks along here?
The Wellington? No.
No, there are no
So,
sidewalks.
No plans for any?
Mr. Pugh.
Right.
No, you can walk down the street to the Salter
People are
sidewalks.
always,
Okay, perfect.
when they put a new, like they've got a new house going the next street over from me, and they're doing all
All
kinds
right.
of stuff, aren't they in the right of way all the time? In the yard like that?
For this, we
Going
have to
all
go
the way to the
a
curb.
little
Okay,
bit.
quiet please.
We had to go a little bit back what this was. This is next property, and we lived there for over 40 years. So the history is that it was an empty lot. There was a hole. There were weeds all over it. It was pool, whenever the water will come from the upper state, and I would say that I am the lower state, I would say that it's not the water from the neighbors. It's simply Mother Nature. In Alabama, when it rains, it rains. So it will arrive here, and this is that where those security
Cones, yeah.
When it arrives there, the water will not go to the channel that is supposed to go down below, because up there are properties. The street goes in a very high ramp. The steep is really tremendous, and the water has to go somewhere. So before, we have there a pool that was bigger than the city of Homewood pool, and oh yeah, and there were snakes, and there were all sorts of you name it, and you got it. Prior, for me purchasing this lot, it's not that I needed more property. I just, I'm very allergic to grass. I'm a European. I was born a European. I lived here for many years. This is my son. He was born here. And we are both attorneys. We have a law office right here on Highway 31, on Nathan Smith. And the fact is that we couldn't do anything prior to that. It was just a property that they didn't want to sell for whatever reason. And we were just holding the everything, you name it. Finally, it got to a point where, to make this story very short, we could purchase the property, but of course there was a lot of work to be done right there. And for the starters, I have to say that the neighbors are very pleased with it, not only because aesthetically it's going to look very nice. It's going to look like a park. And I'm not going to build anything there. I don't have any plan to build anything there. My house is just next to it. It's just going to be left in a manner that will avoid the water to run to my property and to the property of the neighbors on the back that Mr. Pugh have seen the effects of it. Niagara Falls, Homewood, Niagara Falls. So I did hire a group to do something right there. And as we say in the South, before we insult anybody, bless your heart. I had to bless their heart because they did not do anything that was worth anything. Yeah. In fact, it was just spending money, time, and effort, and then irritation that comes into that. So I called another group, and by the way, I don't think that they even got a permit, which I didn't know. But anyway, I just got somebody who was willing, able, and capable to do something. And we started with a wall and then another. Right now we got it. Everything from there to there, the water is not going to be running if we take care of that part right there. Because once, see, if you see this part here, once we avoid the water to come to that way, that corner right there, all the rest will be fine. So this turning curve doesn't have to be more than just taping that part there. And all the rest is just what it is. As a property owner, I have some rights for not to be affected by water that we all could prevent to come to my property and to the neighbors on the very back of the lot. And of course, ordinances are very important. The law is very important to regulate the safety and everything. But there are some times that neither one can solve things unless we use common sense. And the common sense here is that the upper state is there, is nobody's fault, is the water that comes from the rain. The water has to go somewhere, and that corner has to be protected. I just don't have any interest in spending more money and doing more than I have to do.
Sure.
But that's what is needed to do.
So, Mr. Pugh, if I'm understanding correctly, we're building essentially a retaining wall to try and divert water to keep it in the roadway. There's a little bit of slope there from what I can gather on the picture. And the plan is to just infill it with dirt and grass.
Yeah, in speaking with Ms. Son, you explained that it's gonna be landscaped. Is this correct?
Well, Lieutenant doesn't know what's going to happen at the end, but we're going to cover that with, hay or something, so as we discussed, the unsettled land will have something
in the interim, at
temporary.
least to stabilize the land, I understand.
Yeah.
But what's the end? What's
The end product, yeah.
I don't know yet. I have not made plans for it. I will need to do some type of planting or something that will be acceptable and it's good. I cannot put grass. That is one of the things that it put me to purchase that lot, which, by the way, I paid a premium because somebody wanted to build something there, just talking about history.
Sure.
And the whole neighborhood was in arms for somebody to build a Taj Mahal in such a small lot. And we came over many years ago. So I spoke with the builder, and I said, how much money you're planning to make there? And he said, a lot. And I said, I don't think so. I don't think so. And anyway, I convinced him, bought the property, and said, and then my miseries started as to being now the person who, the neighbors were going to come and say, hey, what are you going to do with that? Prior to that, they were letters, and probably the file in the properties right there will show that, the file in the city of Homewood. That's been many, many years ago, as I said, I lived there forever. But the neighbors were writing letters asking the city to clean that lot, I was part of it. I said, sure, I will go there, I will talk with them, And they were not doing anything. And I don't know why, because the city of Homewood always responds very well. I'm very grateful to the city of Homewood for beautifying Homewood and doing so much for Homewood. But at that point, I just say, why not? It looks like that somebody there was working for the fire department. He probably had a license to keep the weeds right there, I don't know. But now we are in the best stage of it. It's clean of weeds, it's flattened all over, right there on the front, and at that point, I want to see what I'm gonna do there. I want to do something right, but right now, I had enough time, money, and effort to spend, and my mind is just wanting to put some hay and think about it, what landscaping I can do.
So, Mr. Pugh, in your opinion, or Kale, is this enough, this retaining wall enough to even suffice her primary issue with the water runoff?
I don't know.
Okay.
It does prevent
Is the
the
wall
water.
in the right of way?
It is.
Yeah.
You can clearly see where the
Yeah.
13 feet is. It's all
Now, the right-of-way begins to curve as the road curves.
back up the hill.
Begins to curve here, but about right here to here is in the right-of-way.
Can I?
That's part of the request.
Yes.
I'm confused. So you've already built in the right of way, is that?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, so
Correct.
you've already built the retaining wall, and you're now requesting.
It was
to do-
unpermitted. It sounds like we didn't realize that we were doing
Exactly,
wrong. So,
exactly. That's why I explained the
so
history.
now
Okay,
we're here
okay.
because somebody,
Yeah.
code enforcement or somebody
that-
else.
Somebody
brought it to
did
us.
something.
Got it, okay.
It didn't
okay.
do
And then
anymore.
You're asking about that,
That
whatever, that
section.
spot, just like right there.
Yeah.
That orange,
Yes, here's
that
the,
yellow.
here's the line
Where's that?
where the right-of-way, this is all right-of-way in here. So the work that they're doing from here all the way down through here is the request to walk in the right.
Oh, and there is
All right.
something very important. I don't know if the picture shows it well, but it looks like that the wall is higher. That's not the purpose. The wall is going parallel to that canal, or that channel, or that concrete, whatever you call it.
The gutter, yeah.
The gutter?
The gutter,
Thank you.
yeah.
So it's gonna be parallel to it. So let's say that we don't put that there. What we are gonna have is concrete in front of our eyes, ugly concrete, and the water may jump over and come to my property. So the way that the wall will be built is parallel to that concrete, which has been raised a little bit in order to avoid any spills of water when it rains very hard to go over. So, I mean, the thing is, if you look at it as it is as a solution, the solution is much better than what is going to be leave it undone. But what do you do there? And the water is going to come not only to this side, but it's coming also from that way. The other side here, on the right-hand side, when you look at, it's obvious. The water is going to go wherever
So
it can.
the primary issue isn't necessarily the water, it's just that work was performed without proper permit in the city right away. So we've got to kind of decide whether or not we're going to clarify that situation for us, Councilor Campbell.
And I have a question. I'm trying to just understand exactly where this property is and what was there before you started working. How long have you owned this piece of property?
I don't remember how long that property, but the house that is next to it on this side.
But I know that did you buy it from 1511, the people who owned 1511 on Ridge?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
No, ma'am. The people from whom I bought it, they never lived there.
But I mean, there was a structure there that belonged, wasn't this all a part of a three-lot?
Do you want to clarify?
Yes, I will be glad if I can.
Well,
I thought it was a
Oh, you were
part
talking
of
about
the three
that.
lots
Yeah.
that
Okay, go
started
ahead.
up on Ridge.
This is Wellington View Road. I don't know what
Ridge
that
Ridge is at the high side behind you,
Yeah.
and there was a big estate, and it was my understanding that they owned the property all the way down to this property. And was there a structure on this?
There was never a structure on it. This is a dead-end street.
Okay, but
And this just curves up.
the one-story brick and frame at 1541, isn't that your property?
That's our property.
1541, yeah.
Wellington View Road.
Right,
That's her
but
property.
is there a structure there now?
there's always been a structure. That was their original home. She bought the lot adjacent to it.
And she's lived there over 40 years.
So there was nothing on that property, it was always just a vacant lot.
Correct.
Just a vacant
Yeah.
lot. It was like a jungle over there. And now she's
Yeah.
made it all nice and neat. All the neighbors love it. The water's gonna channel well.
Okay, thank
It's just
you.
in that area. Somebody would started work on that wall there. We needed to obviously get the permission that we're getting now.
Nobody.
And we want that water to come parallel to where the city has already put the gutter.
Is there?
And then it's not done, so you can't see what it looks like at the end.
Aside from what we're looking at for the right of way, is there any support, for the water? Moving support for the water or anything from the cities end that one way or the other, how this needs to look?
There's no
No,
engineering.
yeah, we don't have
Okay,
a drawing.
okay.
So, Councilor Gwaltney?
Yeah, I just had a couple of questions. I guess I'm concerned about the water runoff from this property onto the, regardless of what comes off the road. From the Google Street View and what I can see here, it looks like the entire property is relatively hard pan, compacted clay, correct? Yes or no?
It's just dirt, unsettled dirt, which is
Dirt,
gonna
so-
be, we have
Doesn't
another
have
permit,
so-
land disturbing permit currently that will be inspected later, and it's gonna be covered, and the plan is to cover it with hay for now until she comes
Yeah,
up
hay
with.
doesn't absorb water is my concern. So what I'm really getting at is, I think in BZ and inspection, don't correct me if I'm wrong, I'd like to have a good understanding of what your plans are for the property, because right now, you can make these improvements and you're keeping the water on the road off your property, but you're negatively impacting everyone down the hill from you. The property next door is 100%, it looks like from Google Street View and our satellite, hard surface. Like the front yard's hard surface, backyard appears to be hard surface. So you've got two lots now, washing water directly on the neighbors below. So I think a plan would be beneficial. And my last question, and I'll be quiet. Will this wall extend above the valley gutter at all?
Will extend above the gutter where the street
Yeah,
has.
the valley
That's not,
gutter is it going to be parallel? Or is it going to be above?
That's the point.
It'd be parallel.
That's the parallel. Now, if,
Looks like it's about 4 feet.
right there it looks like, but that's not the plan.
if you see up there at the very top, that's a sharp turn. Okay, this is a dead end street, by the way, very sharp turn.
if the water's coming down that gutter, obviously if there's excess water, it could just slide right down into this whole back area. And as you can see in that current retaining wall, there's actually a little tube at the bottom, that black tube. Some water is going to come out that way. It's just we're avoiding the massive excess of water as in a pool style coming that way and allowing it to go naturally as the city has made it with their gutter. And that was the idea, was just to finish that little part of the retaining wall as it turns in, so that the water will naturally just ride with the gutter as it always has for many, many years.
As one counselor, I don't have a problem with working the right of way, just understanding the plan for the property, just so that we're not immersed. I live in a neighborhood that's relatively hilly as well. I mean, we see these problems all the time where, you know, we just end up pushing water on neighbors, and I think it's helpful when DEC and inspections have an idea of what's going to be going forward, so they can control that.
We don't have any problem of water now. It was before, I mean, it was
Well,
just
no water on the property on the park.
but there is no water
Well, it
problem.
has to, because there's no grass, there's no trees.
Yeah,
There's
well,
nothing to absorb that water that's on the property
plants,
today.
most likely, or with some plants. I cannot put grass because I'm very allergic to it. That is one of the points of having, you know, a yard far away from me. My right-hand side neighbor, he knows that I'm very allergic to grass. And every time that he's mowing the grass and I leave the house, he stops, we say hello. This may be not very, part of this. I was in a jury trial a long time ago, recently, a few months ago, and I went to the jury room. I was talking with one of the, it was a construction case, and I'm talking with one of the witnesses, and I started sneezing badly, and then I started running nose, blood, bleeding nose, and we had to continue and all that. And I said, where were you working? Sure, he was mowing grass. And he had all that. I'm very allergic, it's nothing I can do. And that's what it is. So that area, I just would like to put some plants, make it a garden, make it a park. My neighbors are very pleased with it. They came many times to say, several times to say, or wherever we are there, oh, this is gonna be so great. It's just a park, it's gonna look nice. Right now, if you tell me that I'm going to put magnolias or I'm going to put roses, I don't know, frankly. I had enough going on there with one thing or another. But I can promise you that's going to be good.
Could we get more of an understanding of the final plan? Because we need to know what the plan is in order for it to be something we can vote for in the right way.
I think we also need to consider the tree ordinance and how an empty lot.
But if we could just, understand some finalized plan so that, because it may not be something we can approve.
Okay. And we do that by carrying this over for
Yeah,
another
we would
couple
need to
of
carry it
weeks.
over, but we would want more information
About what
as
you
far
plan
as.
to do.
Well, the idea, it's very simple. There is a wall right there. There is
Hey,
a
Mr. Pugh said that there could be a request for a no adverse effects letter from an engineer.
Okay.
As well, that could be required, that would help give the city and neighbors a little bit more sound bite and information about how this is.
So could we go ahead and carry this over and get?
Let me look at the alternative. If we don't put that there, the water is gonna inundate everywhere.
Okay.
So it's just.
So shoot.
No other way.
Mr. Kendrick has a question too, real quick.
Yeah, as I understand, this is 2 lots, it's treated for tax purposes 1 lot.
Gotcha.
Was it ever resurveyed into one?
No, that's the question.
Okay.
It needs to be, in order to permit improvements to be made on the 2nd lot, it is a zoning lot under our zoning ordinance. It needs to be resurveyed into 1 lot, no matter whatever.
Before we can do anything, really.
Well, at some point, that doesn't have to be a mandatory, but it's gotta be done. So as a condition of anything that you might approve would be subject to the lot being, 2 lots being surveyed into 1 because it's being used in one homestead.
Okay.
What is up there that you see up there, those are little trees, and right there definitely I have are gonna put some plants in between some stones in order to hold any water.
And that's what we're talking about, is we would like to
That's all
see,
it is.
we'd like to see more information before we move forward.
Rather than
with
just, hey,
approving anything.
you're saying, hey, I mean, we.
So
the
we
plan.
need kind of a formal plan, as well as, I think, a letter saying that there's no negative impact of the structure and the design work on water runoff on other neighbors and in the city right away. So we're gonna carry this item over, and then if we can get that in a couple weeks, great. If not, we can continue to carry it over to give you enough time to kind of get those things in place, okay? And then we can have you work with the fourth floor to go ahead and make sure we get all those items lined up and in the city's hands
Right now,
before we can move forward.
all
with
with
anything.
this is that we are gonna put hay right there.
And I think that
That's all it is.
what the committee is saying is that we could move forward tonight,
I
but
don't
it
know.
sounds like most people would not be in favor of just letting hay be there right now.
That will be for a while.
Well, and that's the problem. No, the committee, it sounds like, wants more information, more plan before they're going to approve your request.
Okay,
So-
and I understand. Now, let me ask, what would you suggest?
I would have
That's not
suggested
my
not clear
expertise,
cutting it in the
so-
first place, and it would have handled the water runoff much better in a natural environment, as opposed to clear cutting it like you did. That's where we have the runoff issues throughout Homewood, is that when you clear cut something, you have to have some type of plan
To absorb it.
to absorb the water, because now it's flying over. So what my suggestion would have been to work with the city before you clear cut the whole property.
Well, we did it.
Well, it looks clear cut to me. I mean, it just looks.
So
But
we're gonna carry this item over. We're gonna request that there's some more information. You can work with the fourth floor, but a final plan with some sort of timeline for it being fulfilled, I think would be important, as well as a letter of no adverse effects from an engineer, and then I
And
think
the resurvey thing
a
has to-
resurvey as kind of a process, the next step. That will be a separate item, but something that we need to kind of move forward on to properly have the lot.
All right, but let me put for the record that as it is now.
Wyatt, is there
the
currently
water-
erosion control
the water
measures
does
on
not
that?
affect-
No, there's no silt guard or anything, it looks like.
Along the back of the property, they did, after we went out there.
Okay.
They did put up some silt fences to stop erosion, and silt from getting onto other properties. So,
I guess.
there's an attempt.
I just want to make sure in this interim too that those measures are taken. Okay.
Yeah, they will need to be maintained, and we'll inspect those periodically to make sure they're maintained.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, so for tonight, we're gonna carry it over. If we don't have enough information, because I understand what's being requested is gonna take some time, you can communicate with Mr. Pugh, and we can know, in 2 weeks if you're ready to talk about it again, have a formal plan, we can move forward at that time. If not, we can just carry the item over to allow you guys to have time to get that done. But I think my understanding is no more work is to be done until we approve or deny it. So, all right, so we're gonna move on to the last item, 210922,
Okay, thank
request
you.
for permission.
Thank you.
For the mayor to sign a letter to AlDOT for future conveyance of right-of-way along Forest Brook Drive. Mr.
Yeah.
Smith.
Oh, sorry.
About a year and a half ago, there was along Forest Brook, we found that a pipe had collapsed.
Yes.
And we started to go out and fix it. So in doing that, we hired surveyors to go out and pick up inlets and all that. And in doing so, they found that AlDOT actually still owned all this property along Forest Brook Drive, including 2 uneconomic remnants.
Yes.
Uneconomic remnants, which are on the next slide, Brian. So AlDOT said, yep, you're right, we're gonna fix this issue, but after we fix it, we're gonna ask the city of Homewood to take over the right-of-way. All right?
So 1102 is not it's just undeveloped land.
Uneconomic remnant.
Okay,
And
perfect.
So is 1120, what'd you call it?
A
A ravine, yep.
Perfect.
So is 1120. So all this will eventually become City of Homewood right of way if once OUDOT sends us conveyance documents. All the letter does is to authorize the mayor to sign it, telling FHWA, the Federal Highway Administration, that we're ready to move forward.
And they're gonna fix it.
All right.
Motion to approve 2109.
They've already fixed it.
Motion to approve by Counselor Sims. Second by Counselor Gear. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0. We are adjourned.